Take a look at a map of the world. Virtually every nation on it is technically bankrupt. The United States is carrying a historic weight, over $38 trillion in national debt. The European Union is shouldering $14 trillion. Japan, nearly $9 trillion. Even oil-rich kingdoms like Saudi Arabia and export powerhouses like Germany are deep in the red. But here is the paradox that breaks your brain. If every single country on Earth owes money, who exactly do they owe it to? Welcome to the money system, where money, power, and the past collide. And as always, nothing is ever as simple as the numbers look. Debt isn't just a burden, it is the structural engineering of the modern world. Every war you study, every financial crisis, every booming decade sits on top of this invisible scaffolding of IOUs. But if you follow the chain of creditors long enough, you discover something unsettling. The world doesn't owe money to Martians. It doesn't owe it to a secret cabal. The world owes this money to itself, but that doesn't mean we're all in this together. To understand how we reach this point, a planet drowning in $315 trillion of total debt, nearly 3 times the size of the global economy, we need to go back to the start. Centuries before the first credit card swipe, the concept of national debt was born, not on Wall Street, but in the trenches. The year is 1694. England is fighting France, and the king is broke. No gold left. So the crown turns to the merchants with a revolutionary offer. You fund the war now, and we will give you a permanent stream of interest payments from future taxes. To manage this, they created the Bank of England. It changed the rules of the game. The state could now spend money it didn't have. And in return, lenders received something priceless, a government promise. A piece of paper that could be traded, sold, or used as collateral. That was the birth of the bond market. France copied it, the Netherlands refined it, and the newly independent United States adopted it to fund the revolution and later manifest destiny. National debt stopped being a mark of failure, it became a credit score. The ability to borrow became the ability to rule. Empires used to conquer land to extract gold. Now, they issued bonds to extract interest. The battlefield had become a balance sheet. Fast forward 300 years. Debt is now Earth's dominant export. Global borrowing jumps by $1 trillion every 100 days. Every country owes. Every bank lends. Every citizen, through taxes, 401ks, and savings, is both the debtor and the creditor. But who is holding the other end of the rope? Let's look at the United States, the heart of the system. Out of that $38 trillion, about half is publicly held. But who are these investors? Roughly 2/3 of them are Americans, U.S. banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The remaining third, about $9 trillion, sits overseas. Japan holds about $1 trillion. China holds roughly $800 billion. So when you hear politicians scream that China owns America, that's true, but only for about 2%. Most of the debt America owes, it owes to America. The Treasury prints bonds, U.S. banks buy them. The Fed buys them back, creating new dollars. You pay taxes to fund the interest, and that interest flows right back into your grandmother's pension fund. It is a hall of mirrors. The debt is real, but the creditor is just a reflection of the same system. This circular firing squad is global. Japan lends to the U.S. via treasuries. The U.S. funds Europe via the IMF. Europe lends to the developing world. And developing nations lend that money right back to the West by parking their reserves in dollars and euros. It is a planetary game of hot potato, except the potato is made of promises. Every player at the poker table is playing with chips borrowed from the guy to their right. And the only rule keeping the game alive is this: nobody is allowed to cash out and leave the table. But there is a fourth player, the most powerful one, the market. Behind every bond is a web of hedge funds and algorithms managing trillions. They are the judges. They decide who borrows cheap and who pays a survival tax. When they lose confidence, currencies collapse overnight. Democracy decides who sits in the White House. The bond market decides if they survive the term. The high priest of this system is the central bank. The Fed doesn't just manage debt, it manufactures it. When the Federal Reserve buys government bonds, it creates money out of thin air. Think about this. There is no such thing as debt-free money. Every dollar bill in your wallet, every digit in your bank account is technically a unit of debt created by a bank somewhere. For decades, this loop ran on confidence. As long as investors believe the government will pay the interest, the machine hums. But when faith cracks, we get Greece in 2010, we get Argentina, we get Sri Lanka running out of fuel. When the system breaks, the invisible creditors suddenly appear. The IMF, the rating agencies, the bondholders, they grab entire nations by the throat. And yet, even after a crash, the system reboots. Why? Because in the 21st century, sovereign debt isn't designed to be paid off. It is designed to be rolled over. Governments do not plan to be debt-free. Not now, not ever. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's standard operating procedure. When you get a mortgage, you have to pay down the principal. The U.S. government treats debt like a Netflix subscription. They issue new bonds today to pay off the old bonds from yesterday. Economists call it refinancing. The interest payments are just the rent we pay for stability. The U.S. will never pay off its $38 trillion. It will refinance it forever. Japan has been doing this for decades with debt over 250% of its GDP, yet their interest rates stay near zero. Investors aren't waiting to be repaid. They are waiting to renew the contract. Why? Because U.S. Treasuries are the collateral of the global banking system. They are the bedrock. If Washington suddenly decided to pay back every single dollar tomorrow, the global financial system would actually collapse. The dollar supply would shrink, banks would lose their safest asset, and the world would spiral into a depression. Paying off the debt would destroy the very economy it supports. So when politicians talk about balancing the budget to eliminate the debt, they are selling you a fantasy. The goal isn't to hit zero. The goal is to keep the illusion convincing enough that the checks don't bounce. It is a closed loop of trust. But here is the catch, that trust isn't free. When we say we owe it to ourselves, that's only half true. Interest payments don't flow equally. They flow upward, from taxpayers and workers up to the institutions and asset holders who own the debt. Sovereign debt is a mechanism for wealth transfer, not just between nations, but between classes. The system rewards those who own the debt and squeezes those who pay the taxes to service it. Creditors aren't villains. Debtors aren't victims. They are two pistons in the same engine. The problem is, what happens when the engine runs out of fuel, when we can't print enough to cover the promises we made? That is when the question, who is the creditor, stops being abstract. At the top of the pyramid, there is no one face to blame. It's not just Wall Street, it's all of us. The modern world has turned debt into money. But if the balance tips, if confidence breaks, the illusion vanishes, and we will remember what debt really is, a promise that cannot be kept forever. If this gave you a new perspective on your money, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'm just showing you where to look.